All right, so we're really going to dig into not nice today, huh? I gotta say, after that summary, I'm kind of hooked. Sounds like you're ready to break free from, like, the whole people-pleasing thing, am I right?
Yeah, you totally got it. It's wild how many people feel stuck, you know? Like they want to be kind, obviously, but then they end up feeling totally steamrolled, their own needs shoved aside. It's this weird dance, and honestly, this book nails it.
And you know I'm all about a deep dive, especially when a book's promising to shake things up, like that whole high cost of nice thing that Gazipura talks about. Honestly, that stopped me in my tracks. Like,
Mhm.
isn't being nice, always supposed to be the goal?
Right, it's like ingrained in us, right? Be nice, be good, all that. But what's so eye-opening is how Gazipura points out the downsides. Like, when you're constantly putting everyone else first, it can totally backfire. Anxiety, resentment, even your body starts freaking out. It's like this slow burn.
He even calls it a nice cage, doesn't he? I swear, I can practically feel the bars closing in.
Powerful image, right?
Hmm.
And it makes me think about how you mentioned feeling trapped by, like, everyone else's expectations, which is totally what that nice cage is all about. Feeling like you have to please everyone else, even if it screws you over.
Whoa, that's like a total light bulb moment right there. Makes you wonder if it's even really kindness when you're sacrificing your own well-being. Maybe it's more about like avoiding awkwardness than actually being generous.
100%. And that's where this whole healthy versus destructive guilt thing comes in. I think you'll appreciate that part. It gets deep.
Okay, break it down for me, because like, isn't all guilt kind of bad? I'd love to just like chuck it all out the window.
Oh, I hear you. But think about it this way, all right? Healthy guilt, it's like a nudge in the right direction.
Mm.
You do something that goes against what you believe in, it pops up, helps you make things right.
Mm.
Destructive guilt, though, that comes from all those shoulds that Gazipura talks about. The ones that don't even really fit who we are.
Those shoulds. Can you give me an example? Like, what does that actually look like in the real world?
Oh, totally. Let's say you've got this coworker who's always dumping extra work on you. You're swamped, but there's that voice saying, you should always say yes. Or maybe it's more like, never disagree with the boss, ever, even when you know they're wrong. It's like these invisible rules holding you back.
It's like we swallowed this rule book that's not even ours, and then we feel guilty when we don't follow it to the letter. No wonder it's called destructive.
Exactly. That's why Gazipur is all about questioning those shoulds. Like, are these really my values? Or just echoes of what someone told me I should be? It's about taking back control, you know?
Like giving those old rules a good hard stare and deciding if they deserve to stick around.
Mm.
So by doing that, by challenging them, that's how we break out of the nice cage.
You got it. And this is where it gets juicy. Gazipura says we got to embrace, get this, our shadow self. I know, it sounds kind of ominous, right?
Shadows? Okay, you've definitely piqued my interest. But gotta admit, I'm a little nervous now. Like, what does that mean exactly?
It's not about becoming some evil twin, I promise.
Mm.
It's more like, think of all the feelings and stuff we're told to keep hidden. Anger, being assertive, even just like healthy selfishness. It's not bad, it's just real.
So instead of burying it all, we should be like exploring it. Feels kind of rebellious, especially if you're trying to be less nice.
Exactly. And get this, Gazipura has tools for that. He talks about these things called certainty rants.
Certainty rants. Okay, you have to
Ah.
elaborate on that because that sounds incredibly therapeutic.
It's crazy freeing. Imagine you're at work, right? Totally swamped, maybe even a little pissed about it. A certainty rant is letting yourself feel all of that, but in a safe way, obviously. Journal, therapist, even the shower. No judgment, just let it rip.
That makes a lot of sense. You're giving yourself permission to actually feel those feelings instead of just like shoving them down all the time.
It's like giving those feelings a voice, right?
Right.
And when we do that, it makes space for like the real us to come through. And speaking of showing up authentically, that's where boundaries come in. Gazipura talks a lot about those.
Boundaries. Whenever I think about like ditching the people pleasing, that's the first thing that pops into my head. But putting them into practice, that's a whole other beast.
Totally get it. It's tough, especially if you're used to putting everyone else first. But here's the thing, and Gazipura really nails this. Boundaries aren't about, like, shutting people out or becoming this ice queen. It's more about owning your own needs and feelings.
Right.
Like, just because you say no to someone doesn't mean you're saying no to connecting with them.
So it's more like instead of being the sponge soaking up everyone's stuff, you're creating a space to actually be yourself. Makes sense, but man, it's scary.
It takes practice, for sure. Remember how you said you want to feel more confident at work? Boundaries are key for that. And Gazipur actually gives you the tools, little steps to get started. Like declining that extra project when you're already drowning, or saying no to a social thing because you need a freaking nap.
It's like building a muscle, right?
Yeah,
The more you do it, the easier it gets.
exactly. And here's a cool thought. Gazipura says that even asking for what you want can actually strengthen relationships.
You know, I had a boss once who said something similar, but I'd love to hear his take on it. Because, like, how does that work, especially when you're trying to break free from always pleasing people?
It's all about trust and vulnerability. When you're straight up about what you need, even in small ways, it shows the other person you trust them enough to be real with them. Like, hey, this is a part of me and I'm letting you see it.
Uh,
That can be really powerful.
it's like the opposite of what most people pleasers do, which is like hide all that stuff and hope someone just magically gets it.
Exactly. And then we end up feeling resentful, right? Like, why don't they just know? It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And this ties directly back to that whole internal validation thing we were talking about.
Because when you're constantly looking for other people to tell you you're okay, you're way less likely to set boundaries or ask for what you need, right?
Bingo. It's like you're saying, here, you hold my self-worth. But Gazipur is all about finding that confidence from within, learning to be your own cheerleader instead of waiting for everyone else to do it for you.
Makes sense, but how the heck do you actually do that? It sounds way easier said than done, especially if you're like wired to please.
It's a process, right?
Okay.
No magic button.
Yeah.
But remember, you mentioned wanting to be cool with disagreeing with people, but like gracefully. That's where Gazipura's whole disagreeing with grace thing comes in.
Disagreeing with grace, that almost sounds like the opposite of being not nice. Like, how do you disagree without causing a whole scene?
I love that. It's this idea that being not nice equals being a jerk. But Gazipura's point is that disagreeing, when it's done right, with respect and all that, can actually make relationships stronger.
So it's not about avoiding disagreements altogether. It's more about like choosing your battles and how you fight them.
You got it.
Yeah.
He talks about these different types of disagreement, which I think you'll appreciate. There's casual, like arguing about which ice cream flavor is the best, all in good fun. Then there's playful, where you're teasing each other, but it's clear you're cool. And then there's direct, where you got to be upfront, but still respectful.
So it's about picking the right tool for the job, basically. Being intentional instead of just defaulting to nice. But what about those times when you feel like you're constantly giving but not getting much back? Like you're being taken advantage of almost.
Ooh, yeah. That's where understanding Gazipura's resentment formula comes in.
Resentment formula. Okay, that sounds intense. I'm taking notes here.
It's actually pretty simple. He says resentment builds when you're always giving, but it feels like you have to. Like you don't have a choice.
Right, it's that feeling of being stuck. Giving out of obligation, not because you genuinely want to.
Exactly. And that's why Gazipura stresses learning to receive as much as you give. Because when you're constantly pouring from an empty cup, you're going to crash and burn.
So how do you break that cycle, especially if you're, like our listener, conditioned to put everyone else first?
One of the most powerful things, challenging that fear of being selfish. Gazipura really digs into this whole idea of healthy selfishness.
Okay, see, now that makes me nervous. Isn't the whole point of being not nice to be less selfish?
Yeah, it's like the word itself has become a bad word, right?
Mm.
But think about it. If always putting others first leaves you burned out, resentful, then something's got to give.
Right, it's like, what's the point of being nice if it makes you miserable?
Exactly. And Gazipura isn't saying, go be a jerk. He's just drawing a line between the kind of selfishness that hurts people and a healthy way of looking out for yourself. The kind that actually lets you show up better in your relationships, you know?
Okay, that makes more sense. It's about finding that sweet spot, right? Where you're honoring yourself and being cool with other people. Kind of like those boundaries we were talking about. They're not selfish. They're just about like setting up healthy lines.
Exactly. It's about getting that saying yes to yourself. Sometimes means saying no to other stuff. And that's totally cool. In fact, it might be the key to actually enjoying your life more. And get this, Gazipura even has this thing, he calls it the selfish algorithm.
Selfish algorithm. Okay, now you have to explain that one. Is it like a pros and cons list for being like appropriately selfish?
It's a great way to think about it. So
Yeah.
picture this. Someone asks you for something, right? The selfish algorithm is like, hold up, let's think this through. It makes you ask, what do I need here? How important is this to the other person? What happens if I say yes? What happens if I say no? It's about making choices that feel right, not just automatically saying yes.
I love that. It's like having your own personal BS detector, right? Helps you avoid those people-pleasing traps.
Totally. And look, it takes practice, right? You won't always nail it, but every time you do choose yourself, you're breaking those old habits.
Oh, much good stuff here. But if our listener had to pick just one thing from not nice to try today, what would it be?
If I had to pick just one, start paying attention. Notice those times when you want to say no, but yes, just pops out. Or when you keep your mouth shut instead of speaking up, just notice it, no judgment. That's where change starts.
It's true, you can't change what you don't see, right? Just by noticing those people-pleasing moments, you're already on your way.
And remember, this isn't about becoming someone totally different. It's about being more you, embracing all of it, even those messy shadow parts, and just showing up as you are.
It's like you're finally breaking free from a mold that doesn't fit anymore. Might be a little weird at first, but ultimately it's about like stepping into your own power, right?
Nailed it. It's a journey, and this book, it's a pretty great guide. So be kind to yourself along the way, okay? Every step towards the real you is a win.